So this is an example of a security scorecard, and cyber ratings in general are meant to help convey something that's potentially sometimes difficult to quantify into an actual number or letter grade. And so we use your traditional A through F letter scores to make it familiar. And one of the things that Security Scorecard does is it scans the entirety of IPv4 internet space every day. Some network blocks for cloud service providers we actually scan 12 times a day. Why? Because it's a fast moving space, right? An IP address might be a part of somebody's AWS or Google, infrastructure or Azure on one day and potentially for someone else the next. And so we've built this incredible engine and we recalibrate it every month to make it more accurate. And we've discovered that we can fairly accurately predict the likelihood of a breach event based on what's called OSINT, open source intelligence. So we have no agent, we have no inside view as to what's happening on someone's platform. And we're just simply gathering information from headers, from DNS records, other sources of data that we purchase, like advertising technology data. We can figure out what types of web browsers on the other side of an IP address. And with these information, we generate a letter score across 10 factors, each of which are listed here. And everyone's entitled to join Security Scorecard's platform and use it for free for your own scorecard. So our mantra, our mission is to help make the world a safer place. So we don't charge you to see your score, to see the details, because we want you to help fix them, the vulnerabilities that can be observed through our scanning, for example. And so the hackers see these things, so why shouldn't you be able to see them? That's part of their reconnaissance phase. And we have over 5 million companies that we've rated, and we have the ability to score a company that isn't in our database within 15 minutes. And the correlation and analysis shows that a company with a D or lower is 7.7 times more likely to be breached than a company with an A. And this is a correlation story that's been demonstrated through a third party that analyzed our risk scores and analysis and breach events. And so we're collecting hundreds of millions of data points a day. We also operate a top 5 sinkhole. So we're gathering malware signals as well. And that's on the order of, I think, maybe 700 million events a day coming in. And this informs our ability to indicate whether or not you're doing the basics, adding HSTS headers. Do you have SPF records for stopping spoofing of email? And so the idea is to help people show progress when they make changes and improvements to their security posture. And of course, it's not just interesting for you to score yourself and to know thyself and to look in the mirror of our platform and see what the rest of the internet can see about you, but to do it for your third parties as well, because we know that the weakest link in a chain will be attacked and will be broken. And oftentimes the weakest link is not you. And so we allow you to have many slots and to purchase a subscription to maintain your core and critical vendors list and to notice changes in their posture as well. And so you don't have to have a $25 million network scanning budget to scan all of the internet. We do that for you, and you gain the insights and value into score drops, breach events, vulnerabilities that pop up for various specific things. And it's a really powerful tool that I've myself, of course, used previously and avoided having to run some of this for due diligence reports and security assessments and things like that. I can talk a little bit more about it later, but that's basically the high level of what you're seeing here. You can download these reports, you can compare yourself to your competitors, you can run a portfolio of high-risk vendors that participate in what we would call like tier 1, data classification, exchange, and data flows with you. And then you can have other ones that are not as important. Maybe somebody that helps you, print t-shirts or, make, tea cozies or beer cozies, right, with your logo on it. You don't necessarily care too much if they get breached as much as someone that's actually providing your core, service delivery platform, for example. If we go to the next slide, what we've done with this integration is under the patching cadence factor, we've found a way to incorporate the hacker reports and the HackerOne research as a positive signal. Most of the things that you would find when you look up yourself or any other company on on the ratings platform, is you'll find negative findings, the lack of some security control, right, or a self-signed certificate, or an expired certificate, or maybe something that's using a weak cipher or protocol, an exposed RDP instance on the internet. But positive signals are also helpful as well. And so under the patching cadence, you can see here that Hacker Report has 248 reports, and you can click on that, and it drives you straight into what HackerOne is doing with their hacker reports, and what are the bug bounties and remediations that were found. Oftentimes, I think, Alex, these are like business logic flaws, not just single CVEs that someone said, hey, you're vulnerable because you're using an old version of an Nginx or Apache. Instead, it's something that has to do with like a workflow, and session management and things like that, right?
That's exactly right. One of the things we find across so many of our customers is hopefully everybody has some vulnerability scanning cadence in place and some vulnerability management program in place that for the most mature companies out there will find and remediate all the known flaws. But that's just a small part of where folks get breached from. And a big part of the findings that come out of our programs are non-CVEs. They're unique to that business and that application, which is becoming increasingly common as pretty much everybody that we work with has some development team in shop, is in some stage of digital transformation. And the world of 2 decades ago, where the only vulnerabilities you had to worry about were in other people's software, it's increasingly in your own attack surface, and you're increasingly part of somebody else's attack surface. And so we wanted to position these in a way where we think it's a positive thing. Those organizations that say, I'm on top of all of the known findings, but I want to have a process in place for security researchers and hackers across the internet to tell me about vulnerabilities if I've missed anything. We call that a vulnerability disclosure program that are increasingly becoming mandated. NIST 853, the Rev 5 has the requirement of a disclosure program under their vulnerability management control. Biden's executive order from I think 3 weeks ago now lists it out as required best practice for vulnerability management. And so we're just acknowledging the fact that vulnerability scanning for CVEs is a small part of the puzzle, and we can find more. We put HackerOne's own scorecard up here because we want to have a real example of what some of these look like, and we didn't want to be presumptuous with any customers here, looking at a little bit of a inside look into HackerOne's own vulnerabilities now. And I thought for a minute we would dive into the most micro level of what these look like and take a look at an individual vulnerability report. As you see on there's 248 findings.
Real quick, I want to make one other observation. Discovery is a really powerful component, right, of finding things that you didn't know about, right, the unknown unknowns. And one of the times when I'm speaking with various security people and looking at their scorecard is that there's this idea of a declarative infrastructure, right? You go to the infrastructure team, you say, where are our assets? And let's scan them and let's have a penetration test performed against it, right? But what I found most useful about the security scorecard is that we're actually discovering assets that people didn't know they had, right? Somebody swipes a credit card and buys a domain name and puts a certificate on a WordPress site and starts doing something, right? It's kind of off book, rogue or black ops type infrastructure. For better or for worse, these things happen in large and small companies. And so oftentimes, I know that it was fascinating. People's like, no, that's not our IP address. And we'll go and look, and we'll go and look at the attribution scan and figure out, no, this was a certificate that was issued for a marketing, campaign that was done that's hosted on a Linode server from 2014, and no one knew about it, right? And it's still there. And so this discovery aspect is useful because oftentimes people think that, well, how can you possibly know what my assets are because you're not on the inside? I'm like, well, that's true, but I think we're what I would call a necessary but not sufficient tool to observe what is your attack surface. And just as your hacker reports want people to find bugs and to discover them and report them, this aspect of not assuming what your attack surface is an important part of being proactive about your security posture.
Very cool. So now we'll dive into one of these specific examples just to quickly walk through what we mean by positive indicator. here. So HackerOne, we run a program on our own infrastructure and attack service that encourages hackers to submit things that they've spotted. Sharing a public example here that we've disclosed of a hacker that reported a vulnerability in our Jira integration. So it's a vulnerability that affects multiple parties here. In this case, it's a vulnerability in HackerOne's software, but it has implications on one of our third parties, Jira, who we integrate with, which then has implications on all of our customers that integrate their Jira instances into us. So the blast radius for something like this becomes pretty wide pretty quickly. But why is this a positive indicator if it's a vulnerability? We hope that HackerOne having a process like this for people to find these things so they get remediated gives you some degree of confidence in our attack surface if you're relying on us for your security. But also you get a very clear sense of how an organization responds to a finding like this. We'll scroll through the vulnerability report just for a minute. And then you can quickly see that they're getting an issues getting triaged and validated within a short period of time and resolved shortly afterwards. And this is telling you that not that vulnerabilities don't exist or that HackerOne is immune or that we're never going to have a security breach, but it's an indicator of our overall security posture, is that there's a process in place that you can have confidence in, that vulnerabilities are taken in and remediated in a timely fashion across the board from a very diverse and messy set of use cases there.
It's a healthy feedback loop. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And then, so when this rolls up to the overall scorecard that you're looking at for HackerOne, you can have trend analysis across the board for worst case scenario, one less thing you have to worry about with that particular vendor. You can be far more informed about any security or trust decisions you're making with regard to those vendors.